On behalf of the First Unitarian Church of Oakland, I welcome you this morning. I forgot, I'm not standing next to anyone. My name is Claudine Tong, and I serve this church as a member of your Board of Trustees. Today we are honored to have the Reverend Kristina Spaude sharing a word with us. And let's see. So I guess I'm the board member making the announcements. So I fortunately looked a few up. Okay, they're not quite in order. Well, okay, I'll make them in order. Next Sunday, we have our witching hour with the Circle of Oak, which is from 12 to 1, the second Sunday monthly. And it is on Zoom, and you can get all this information in the Chalice Chatter. On Monday, August 15th, from 7:30 to 8:45, we have our third Monday meditation group. Carol Emmert is facilitating that, and you can contact her at the information in the Chalice Chatter. On Wednesday, August 17th, from 7:30 to 8:30, we have Starting Point on the third, and it's going to be the third Wednesday monthly, and it's to meet about how we practice Unitarian Universalism by covenant together, sharing our mission, vision, and action. I encourage everybody to try to be part of that. I'll try to be one before we go back to choir. And two more little save the date for our all-church end of summer picnic. It's going to be Sunday, August the 28th at Lowell Park, which is just down the street, right after church, about 12 till about 2. And lastly, but not least, please save the date for a next generation anti-racism training. Jubilee 3 is scheduled for September 9th through 11th, and a registration is open now. You can go to paulacolejones.com to register, and of course, as I said, all the information is in the Chalice Chatter. All right, so welcome. The people, of course, we have if anybody's here is new, we have guest connection cards that can be filled out. You can get them from one of the ushers. Or we have, I know on Zoom somewhere, that they'll put it in the chat that there's a guest connection card. Welcome to everyone. And now I guess it's time for the candle lightings. So I'm going to go over here and light this lighter candle. Yeah, I guess so. Okay. All right. It's in this order, right? Yeah, I have to use my big mouth. Okay. Let's see. That projection that we all learned as children in choir, because we didn't have mics. Okay. For our peace candle, if someone thinks that peace and love is a cliche that we have left behind in the 60s, that's a problem. Peace and love are eternal. John. Okay. And then in our Black Lives Matter candle, we light this candle today as a witness that represents the unquenchable fire for justice for Black people that burns in our hearts and guides our actions as a congregation. Together we say, Black Lives Matter. All right, everybody. Let's go. We light this chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. May it spark in all of creation the power you, everyone. All right. And now we are going to be joined by the Reverend Kristina Spaude, who is going to be, right? That's what I have on my schedule.
Thank you so much, Claudine. Our opening words today come from my colleague, Kristen Harper. This is called Each Day. Each day provides us with an opportunity to love again, to hurt again, to embrace joy, to experience unease, to discover the tragic. Each day provides us with the opportunity to live. This day is no different, this hour no more unique than the last, except maybe today, maybe now, among friends and fellow journeyers, maybe for the first time, maybe silently, we can share ourselves.
And in one voice, the people say, "Come, let us worship together." Great. Okay, and now we have the Reverend Kristina Spaude again.
This isn't a reading so much as it is a story for all ages today. This is an edited down version of the story God in Between by Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso. Once there was a town at the foot of a hill with no roads and almost no windows. Without roads, there was nowhere to go. Whenever they tried to leave their homes, the people who lived in the town would sneeze through all the tangled weeds, tumble into deep holes, and trip over rocks as large as watermelons. Without windows, they slept late into the day. They couldn't see in or out of their houses. The people got tired of sneezing, of tumbling and tripping, of seeing nothing and going nowhere. So they gathered at the center of the town to decide what to do. Someone said, I heard there is a God, and when people find God, God solves their problems. Let us find this God, another shouted, and God will build windows and roads for us. Others thought this was ridiculous. People just pretend there is a God. If God were real, God would find us. Yet the people saw no other way to fix their town, so they decided to look for God. But they couldn't go anywhere without roads. There were 2 old houses on the edge of town, each with a single window. They called the man and woman who lived in those houses the ones who could see out windows. If they can see out windows, maybe they can see a way to God. So the people of the town sent them to search for God. They thought God must be on the other side of the hill. They made their way out of the town. Some people thought they would never return. The woman who could see out windows went to a mountain. The climb was steep and the peak was cold. She gazed up at the sky. She looked down to the ground, but she did not see God. Then the woman thought that God might be in the deep waters. So she set sail on a ship and went far out into the ocean. A storm came and the ship tossed and turned on the waves. She got sick. She decided to return to dry land. Meanwhile, the man who could see out windows traveled to the desert. He listened for God in the winds and looked in the sands, getting sunburned, blistered, but he did not find God. Then the man thought he might find God in a cave. He searched in the dark and listened in the silence. It was lonely and scary in the cave, and he did not find God. The man and woman were tired and decided to stop looking for God. Each hoped the other had been successful. But when they met, she saw his drooping shoulders and he saw her sad eyes. Neither had found God. It was a dark, moonless night, and the ones who could see out windows could only see each other. In soft, small voices, they talked all through the night. In the morning, they agreed it was time to go home. The townspeople saw the man and woman returning, and they gathered to greet them. Tell us, where is God? The woman said, I climbed a tall mountain. I traveled on the waters, but I did not find God. The man said, I walked across the desert. I sat alone in a cave, but I did not find God. The people shouted, we were right. There is no God. They got louder and louder. They were so busy complaining that they forgot about the ones who could see out windows and about God. Days passed and everything was the same in the town, except for one thing. The man and the woman helped each other put windows in every room of their homes. Then they cut the weeds and filled the holes and cleared the rocks to build a road between their houses. The townspeople were stunned. We've never had any roads, and we've never seen so many windows. How did you do that? With God's help, they answered. But you told us that you had gone to the mountains and the sea, to the desert and the cave, and there was no God. We journeyed hundreds of miles looking for God, and then we found each other, said the woman. And we discovered God was with us," added the man. "With you? Right here? At home?" "Wherever we are," answered the woman. "What about beyond the hill, in the mountains and the sea and the desert and the cave?" "Wherever we are," said the man. "But I can't see God anywhere," someone insisted. "I just see you. If God is here, show us where." The ones who could see out windows spoke in a whisper. The people gathered close to listen. "God is in the between," they said, "in between us."
Thank you, Raymond Spaude. Okay, this is the time. Get up, say hello, stretch. Because nobody's looking at me. If we could start moving back to our seats and we can join in on this song. Oh, uh, oh, I have a different thing. Okay. And now it is time for the time in our service that we call our embracing meditation. And let me, every person wants to know that however vast and impersonal all life about us may seem, however hard may be the stretch of road on which we are journeying, we are not alone, but the object of another's care and concern. We want to know this is an awareness sufficient to hold us against ultimate fear and panic. It is precisely at this point of awareness that life becomes personal and we become persons, and the way is clear for us to experience our own spirits. Now is the time in our service where we lift those in our circle of concern into the loving embrace of our larger community. Let us speak the names or write in the chat of those we wish to memorialize, celebrate, or remember today in embracing meditation. I'm going to ring the bell to start, and then I'll ring it to end. It's just hard for me to hear, but if we have Judith Hunt and then Susan Kiter, who was our music associate this today, but has been home with COVID for 10 days. I have a couple family friends, the Malavis and the Alonzos. Prayer for them. For the names that have been spoken, and for those that remain in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, we offer these into the loving embrace of this community. Okay. And together we say, we hold them in our care. Thank you. Thank you to Brianna for the slides. And now we have a pastoral prayer by Reverend Spaude.
These words come from Gretchen Haley, forged in the fire of our coming together. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails, as if the new zodiac capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promises of making sense or turning out the way we thought, as if we are not also actors in this still unfolding story. For this hour, we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all already figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all the control or none. Here in our song and our silence, our stories, and our sharing, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root that is courage, forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still a new world is possible, that we are creating it already, here and now. I've seen so many things that were mentioned in the chat, and honestly, I could not hear most of the things that were said in the sanctuary, but I know there is much on people's hearts. And so today, in this moment, we give thanks for that opportunity to be together, to be with people who we love and who love us, sometimes in spite of ourselves, and give us the strength and the courage to continue moving through our days. Our reading just accidentally closed. Is an excerpt from an interview with Rachel Naomi Raymond. Many of us don't know that our love matters. We are a technological culture, so we think that we are supposed to be able to fix people's problems, or we think that there is a right thing to say. People want to be comforting, but they aren't sure how to do that. What I have discovered is that it is the simple human connection that matters. Nobody expects you to fix their lymphoma or breast cancer, but people expect or hope that their suffering really matters to you. All that's needed is to say, I heard about your illness. I'm so sorry. Just say it and really mean it. Say it from your heart. There is nothing more powerful. I remember one of the most profound things that ever happened to me when I was young, in the midst of my really severe suffering with my illness, was when this person came up to me and said, you know, I heard that it's been hard for you. I'm so sorry. Then their eyes filled with tears. I knew my life mattered. I knew that they cared about me. I felt strengthened to go on. They didn't fix a thing about me. They were just real. Some of us feel being real isn't enough. We think we are supposed to be an expert and have the right words or the right answer. We are the right answer. Everywhere, says the poem by Warsan Shire, a London-based Somali poet. The end of the poem, titled "What They Did Yesterday Afternoon," reads, "Later that night, I held an atlas on my lap, ran my fingers across the whole world, and whispered, 'Where does it hurt?' And it answered, 'Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere.'" From politics and politicians and the media, holy wow, the media dividing us, worsened by the pandemic, to the fear that seeps into everything. Social media, our homes and schools and work, the fear. We live in fear, even if we are not afraid ourselves, we are surrounded by it. Fear is a natural emotional response. Its job is to keep us safe, but it can be abused too. And the recent past presidential administration, and I live in Florida, people unwilling to get vaccinated when they're able to protect the rest of us, assault on the environment, and refusal to care for people impacted. What happens to Black and brown and female and LGBTQIA plus and immigrant and indigenous and disabled people, and the news from all over the world. Civil wars, terrorism, refugee crises, abuses, assaults, climate volatility and crisis, pandemic spread and death, new possible pandemic spread. So many things to be fearful of and for. So many things used to make us fearful, and we are. And some of us are afraid for the people who afraid of or for the people who are afraid. Pandemic has amped this up for all of us. It's overwhelming and exhausting. Living in this world is hard, and it hurts everywhere. What do we do? If there was a simple fix that could just make it all better, I hope it would have been applied by now. Maybe we are waiting for someone else to figure it out because it seems too big for us to do alone. Then there are wildly different opinions on how we've gotten to where we are, and they all know a part of the truth. It can be easy to forget that we know a truth, not the truth. We other each other. We name call and point fingers and antagonize and objectify and act out of our fears. We might acknowledge that in that time and place, we may not be our best selves. I actually think that just noticing that we may not be our best selves is movement in the right direction. When we notice others' humanity and our own, that one's important and we sometimes forget it. When we notice our humanity, we might pause. It's not about who's right and who is wrong or how wrong or right they are. That isn't a foundation for building relationships. It doesn't bring us nearer each other, but keeps us pushing away. It disconnects us instead of connecting us. There's friction and differences. But one truth about human beings is that we are social creatures wired for connection, and it is relationships that are the foundations that sustain us physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. We need each other. It can be hard to set our own passions and frustrations and excitement or assuredness that we are right or whatever else aside. A practice that can be helpful is to first notice that we are having a response. Especially when we are having an emotional response, we often stop listening to other people. Sometimes I notice I'm having a conversation with someone, either online or in real life, and I can tell that at best, one of us is listening to what the other has to say. It happens to all of us. I witness it every day. Each person is stuck in their side of the conversation and unable or unwilling to make space for the other side or another possibility. This is talking to or at instead of talking with, and may feel like having two separate conversations because that is what's happening. People are talking past each other instead of with each other. Instead of being in relationship, they are trying to be heard. And yet, it is in the differences that we find the possibilities and opportunities to build bridges between us, if we choose to see it that way. That is our work and our wonder. Let's talk about a concept called flipping the script. Non-complementarity is the technical term. So complementarity, which is typical behavior, is when we mirror and reflect each other. For example, if I am smiling and warm to you, you are more likely, much more likely, they say, to smile and be warm back to me. If I give you the side eye, though, or seem curt or cold, you are more likely to have a similarly unwelcoming response to me, much more likely. Sitting face to face and having a conversation, and each person leans in physically, moving forward toward each other, that is complementarity. Non-complementarity, then, is when we do the opposite of this. Someone shouts at you in anger and you remain calm, for example. There was a podcast I listened to from Invisibilia where a situation was recreated. A gunman appeared and held up an outdoor dinner party, a celebration of a group of close friends for good news. At first, the evening partiers tried to make the gunman feel guilty and ashamed. That is complementarity, trading negative for negative, matching, and even trying to outdo the other. In that case, and as is often the case, this escalated the situation quickly. After some very tense moments, one of the partiers offered the gunman a glass of wine and invited him to join the party. This is non-complementarity, which actually diffused the situation, flipping the script of what could have happened, of what was actually in the process of happening. The gunman does join, drinks some wine and has some cheese and compliments how good they are. He notes that he thought he came to the wrong party. A little later, he asks if he can get a hug, and then a group hug. He apologizes and leaves. Now, in the podcast, they continue exploring this concept using a psychological lens. It's really interesting, and I definitely recommend it. The episode is called Flip the Script from July of 2016. And what really struck me is something that isn't addressed. It affirms more than anything what each of us wants and needs to know is that we are seen and heard and known and cared for, even if just for a brief time, by someone else, that the other is ours. This can be as deep as listening to each other's stories, knowing another person on that deep heart level, like in the story, the man and the woman who could see out windows. Or it can be as much smaller or simpler, all the way down to holding a door for someone and perhaps looking them in the eye. Because for that brief moment, people know that they are acknowledged and someone cared enough about their presence to hold the door. That someone else acknowledged they exist and offered them a kindness. This is a spiritual practice, and in the time of that relationship, from the blink of an eye to years of devotion, this is a spiritual gift. It is in the relationship that the holy lives and dwells. Leaning in is a phrase that became popular a while back in a different context, but I think that that idea of leaning in offers us much in our relationships too, whether physically or metaphorically leaning in. Not because it solves or fixes anything, it won't necessarily, and that's not the point, but because it attends to and prioritizes the relationship. Anything we do with intention and care is sacred, holy. It is in the space between us where God is, that God lives. Treating our relationships as though they are where the transcendent lives, that is where the sacred dwells, can transform our interactions and our relationships. When we lean into each other, wanting to know more, letting down our defenses, wondering about the person we're with, that's when things begin to change. So we notice ourselves having an emotional response, we pause and breathe, and we lean in. In the podcast, they say that flipping the script, that non-complementarity, is something very, very hard to do. I wasn't sure I agreed until I started thinking about our natural preference for comfort and familiarity, and leaning in and listening to another person, especially somebody we already perceive as different from ourselves in sometimes significant ways. It may be a risk. It may seem uncomfortable. We may not agree with everything that someone says. We may get offended. I'm still not sure I entirely agree that this is something that's very, very hard to do, but I do acknowledge that it is against our natural inclination for maintaining the status quo. The other part of this, though, is that when we listen and trust and believe that what another person is saying is true, maybe their truth, but still true. And maybe that's a way to keep present, knowing that this is the other person's truth. When we listen, we are affirming their person, their identities, their beliefs, and most especially their need to be known. And when we do this, we are also affirmed. We grow. And we invite the sacred in with our intention to be in relationship, leaning into that intention when we seek to know each other. In our faith, we sometimes talk about prophetic witness. The Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker, one of my favorite contemporary UU theologians, says, "Behind the lone prophet who speaks up, there is a group. It is always a mistake to imagine that lone prophets are really alone. We should think of Jesus this way, for example. It is a mistake to see him as an isolated, heroic individual. It is better to see him as the crest of a wave, the sparkling foam breaking brightly from the force of a whole ocean, moving and swelling up from the underneath. Prophetic witness is incredibly important now as much as ever. It's a part of my work, and I believe it's work that we are called to from a particular perspective as Unitarian Universalists, celebrating wholeness and the need for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice as we do. William is affirming that call. What we need in times like these is not only prophetic witness, though. We are also called to what I refer to as prophetic witness. We need each other. We need to learn how to be together and to lean in and listen to each other if we want the world to heal. Parker says, behind the lone prophet who speaks up, there is a group. We are part of that group, and the way we do our part is by being with, talking with, sharing with, breaking bread with. I'm not saying we need to accept intolerance, hatred, bigotry, violence, fascism, or anything else, and I most certainly hope that we don't. But we have become so divided and so focused on needing to, we might say, protect ourselves behind these walls that have been created and are fed into from so many places that we struggle to practice witness. And what this world needs now more than anything is witness. This is the hardest work we will do, and we must find our way. Witness is what we Unitarian Universalists, bound by shared covenants, are called to do by who we are. Krista Tippett on the On Being podcast says, prophets help us connect the dots between the world as it is and the world as it might be. That space between the dots is sacred space, the space where we are with, where God, whatever your understanding of that may be, where God is with us, where the sacred dwells, where we are with each other. We need to be the people we're hoping to lead us, and we need to practice witness in those between spaces, connecting the dots with everyone as best we can, because we can't be the people we want with only some people. May we claim our heretical religious heritage, calling for love, justice, and mercy in this life. This is how we can bring some healing to the world everywhere.
Thank you, Reverend Spaude. That was awesome. Oh, so here is our time. Let me see. I had a nice little thing I saved. I am paraphrasing from something from most of it is his words, from the Reverend Eric Walker Wickstrom. I'll tell you, here at First Unitarian Church of Oakland, we would like it so much if you were joyful, if you joyfully gave to this community, but we'll take your check even if you're grumpy. Okay. As the ushers prepare to take this morning's offering, may each of us look into not just our wallets or checkbooks to see how much we have with us. Let us also look into our hearts and see what is available there. How much love, how much generosity, how much faith, how much gratitude, and how much hope. And let us take our offering from that account. And of course, everybody who is on Zoom, there are instructions on the screen. Us here in the sanctuary, and also all the people joining us. And I think it's also included in the chat. And I think if you'll join me in saying the words of our congregational covenant. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community. We dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings. Thank you. And we have a benediction from Reverend Spaude.
I've taken to closing the worship services with the congregation I serve with the same words every week because they have grown to love them, and so I share them now with you. In the lore of ancient China, there is a story of a philosopher who was asked, "Where is the road called hope?" He replied, "It does not exist, but as people move forward upon it, it comes into being." I invite you to continue moving forward on this road called hope that Jean Harrison Newyar has written about in her work, The Gift of Faith, with me.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And I think we're going to try to, for those of us who are here, if people want to get together and try to go have lunch together, we're going to try to do that. Thank you. Where? Wang Chen Noodle House at 9th and Washington? Okay, yeah, so if you're not familiar, that's about, what, 6 blocks over? Yeah, so, oh yeah, that way. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much to Zach Campbell and Vincent.